Hello? It all began one quiet evening when I was flicking through the channels. I had heard that my wife's latest movie was finally airing on TV, and I decided to give it a watch. She had been away a lot for this project, and even though I knew how important it was to her, I hadn't seen any of the footage up until that point. As the movie played out, I sat there stunned. There she was on the screen, playing the lead role. But this wasn't just any role, it was intense. There were moments between her and another actor that felt so intimate. Watching her, I felt this strange, tight knot in my stomach. She was playing a character, sure, but for a moment, it felt like she wasn't the woman I knew. I couldn't explain it, but the whole thing made me feel uneasy. My mind raced. It's just acting, I told myself. She's just doing her job. But there was something about it that felt too real. She seemed so caught up in the emotion of it. The way she laughed and interacted with the actor, it was like they were in their own world. And in that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Was I just being paranoid? The next day, I brought it up casually. I didn't want to sound like a jealous husband, but I couldn't help myself. I asked her how it felt to film those scenes, to be so close to someone else. She gave me the same explanation I expected. It's just part of the role, babe. You know that's not me. But even as she said the words, I noticed something in her expression, a hint of discomfort, maybe even defensiveness. Was it all just part of the job? I didn't press her any further that night. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept replaying those scenes in my head, the way she smiled at him, the way they interacted so naturally. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but deep down, I felt like there was something she wasn't telling me. Days passed, but the feeling wouldn't leave. Every time I saw her on screen, I found myself watching her differently. She was still the woman I loved, but there was a distance between us now. Something I couldn't quite place. Then, a few weeks later, the movie's premiere came up. She invited me, of course, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this night would change everything. The night of the premiere arrived, and I still hadn't fully shaken the unsettling thoughts in my mind. I'd been to a few premieres before, but this time felt different. Maybe it was the way I kept replaying those scenes in my head, or the strange sense of distance I'd been feeling from her. Either way, something didn't sit right with me. She looked stunning as always. Dressed in a beautiful gown, her hair styled perfectly, and a smile that could light up a room. But even as I complimented her, I couldn't help but notice how her eyes sparkled differently, like she was in a world I wasn't a part of. When we arrived at the theater, I noticed a few familiar faces, other actors from the movie, producers, and a handful of press people. The atmosphere was filled with excitement, but I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling in my gut. I watched as she mingled with her co-stars, laughing, talking about the movie. But the way she was looking at one of the producers, a man named Paul, made my skin crawl. He was a tall, confident guy, clearly well established in the industry. He'd been around for years and had a reputation for helping actors get the roles that would define their careers. I had never met him before, but I'd heard my wife mention his name in passing. "Paul's the one who pushed me for the lead role," she'd said once. "He believes in me." I didn't think much of it at the time, but tonight, watching the way they interacted, something felt off. They stood closer to each other than necessary, their conversation lingering a bit longer than it should have. Every time he laughed, she seemed to laugh just a bit louder, her hand resting on his arm a little too casually. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just the pressure of the night. But the feeling that something was wrong lingered, gnawing at me like a splinter under my skin. The night went on, and the movie started. Sitting in the theater, I couldn't escape the images of her on screen, in those scenes with the same actor from earlier. But now, it wasn't just about the film. It was about the way she carried herself, the way she was glowing. Something had changed, and I could feel it. It wasn't just the role, it was the life she was leading outside of it. When the credits rolled, she came over to me with that familiar smile. But this time, it didn't feel like the same smile I'd fallen in love with. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft and concerned, but something in her tones seemed distant. I nodded, but inside I wasn't okay. Something had shifted. As the evening wore on, I found myself drifting away from the crowd, my eyes instinctively following Paul and her as they disappeared into a quieter corner of the room. They were talking again, laughing, and then I saw him touch her arm lightly as she looked up at him, smiling in a way I had never seen her smile at anyone before. It wasn't a smile for the cameras. It wasn't the smile she gave me. And then, like a punch to the stomach, I realized that I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just a professional relationship. There was something more here, something beneath the surface. I couldn't explain it, but I knew it. The way they interacted wasn't just business, it was personal. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down I couldn't. I could feel that something was happening between them, something that wasn't supposed to be happening. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The more I replayed the night in my mind, the more certain I became that there was something going on between my wife and Paul. I told myself I was just being paranoid, overthinking everything, but the gut feeling wouldn't go away. That night, after the premiere, we got back home, and I had to confront her. I couldn't live with this feeling of doubt hanging over me anymore. We got into the apartment, and as soon as I shut the door behind us, I turned to her. "So, what's going on with you and Paul?" I asked, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. Her eyes widened in surprise, then quickly narrowed in that familiar defensive way. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone sharp, though she tried to hide it with a forced smile. "You know what I mean. You two were practically glued to each other all night. Laughing, whispering, touching. What was that?" She laughed it off, but it felt forced, like she was trying to play it cool. "It's just a movie, babe. You know how it is. Paul's been a huge supporter of mine. He's been there for me through the tough stuff. That's all." I watched her carefully. Her eyes flickered, but she quickly looked away. The way she was avoiding eye contact felt wrong, like she was hiding something. "Look, I'm not dumb. I saw the way you were acting with him. That wasn't just business." She stepped closer, now clearly irritated. "You're being ridiculous. You think I'm doing something with him just because we talked at the premiere? You're acting jealous, and it's really starting to get on my nerves." I could feel my pulse quicken. Her words hit hard. Maybe I was being paranoid, maybe I was just projecting my insecurities. But the doubt was eating at me, and I couldn't just ignore it. "I don't care about the movie," I snapped, my voice rising. "It's about the way you act when you're with him. Like you're more than just friends. You never act like that with me. Why am I not enough for you?" She stepped back, visibly taken aback by my anger. "You're being crazy," she muttered, shaking her head. "You need to trust me more, that's the problem." I couldn't take it anymore. "I do trust you. But I don't trust him. And I don't trust the way you two act together. You're hiding something, and I need to know what it is." Her expression hardened. "I'm not hiding anything, okay? You need to relax." Her voice dropped to a low, almost condescending tone. "Maybe if you were more supportive, you wouldn't be so paranoid." That hit like a slap. It felt like a complete dismissal of my feelings, like my concerns didn't matter. All my instincts screamed that something was off, but here she was, brushing me off like I was the one who was crazy. The silence stretched out between us. I wanted to say more, to push further, but I knew I had to stop. I had no proof, nothing concrete. Just the way she made me feel and the way Paul and she acted around each other. But as she turned to walk away, I noticed something else. A small detail. A text on her phone screen. Her screen was dim, but I could make out the message preview from Paul. "Can't wait for tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you after the shoot." My blood ran cold. I saw her glance down at her phone before quickly locking it, a nervous smile on her face. It was a small thing, but it was enough to make my heart drop into my stomach. I stared at her for a moment, my anger simmering just beneath the surface, ready to boil over. "Tomorrow?" I repeated, barely above a whisper. "What's that about?" She paused, her back to me, frozen for a moment. Then she sighed, turning back slowly. Look, it's nothing. Just a work thing, okay? Can we just drop it? But I wasn't stupid. I could feel it in my gut. This wasn't just about work. This was something deeper. And I knew, at that moment, that things were about to change. I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. The next morning, I couldn't get that message out of my head. The words kept replaying in my mind. Can't wait for tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you after the shoot. It felt like a punch in the gut every time I thought about it. What did that even mean? I tried to push it aside, tried to act normal as I made coffee and went through the motions of the day. She was still asleep when I got up, her phone lying on the bedside table. The temptation was too much. I grabbed it. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was a violation of her privacy, but something inside me screamed to find out the truth. What was really going on between her and Paul? Her phone was unlocked. That in itself felt like a sign. I opened the messages, scrolling past the mundane texts she'd sent to friends and family. Then I found it, a thread with Paul. The messages were casual at first, but as I kept reading, the tone shifted. It was subtle, but the intimacy was there. The way they flirted, how she complimented him on his charm and magnetic energy. And then, towards the bottom, I found it. I love how you make me feel, she had written. Can't wait to see you after the shoot tonight. I froze. My heart started to pound in my chest. I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't just a professional relationship. She was emotionally involved with him. She wasn't just playing a role on screen, she was playing it in real life. I felt my hands shake. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, demand the truth, make her confess everything. But another part of me, a darker part, just wanted to see how deep this went. I needed to know the full extent of what was happening. I put the phone back where it was and went to the kitchen, trying to calm myself. But there was no going back. I knew now, without a shadow of a doubt, that she was seeing him in ways that went beyond work. She was betraying me. She eventually came down the stairs, all fresh-faced, acting as if everything was fine. She smiled at me, but I could see the faint tension in her eyes. Morning, she said, a little too brightly. Morning, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed to ask her. I needed to get this over with, but part of me was afraid. Afraid of hearing the truth. Afraid of what I might do once I knew. Are you going to the set today? I asked, pretending I wasn't already aware of her plans. Yeah, she said, grabbing her coffee. We're doing a night shoot. I'll be late, but I'll be back soon. Late? I echoed, my pulse quickening. Who's going to be there? I could feel the anger starting to rise again, but I kept it under control. She paused, her eyes flickering with that familiar unease. You know, the usual crew. Paul's going to be there, obviously. He's producing tonight's scene. I couldn't stop the words from coming out. You and Paul get along pretty well, huh? She gave me a sharp look. What's this about? I forced myself to keep my voice calm, even though everything inside me was boiling over. I don't know. You just seem a little too close. That's all. She laughed, but it was empty. This again? You know you have nothing to worry about. I'm married to you, not him. But the look in her eyes said something else. There was a flicker there, a small hesitation, before she quickly covered it up with a forced smile. I couldn't believe it. She was lying to my face, and I knew it. Then, as if she could sense that I wasn't buying it, she gave a tight-lipped smile. I'll see you later, okay? Don't stay mad. I watched her leave, every step she took making my heart feel heavier. She didn't even kiss me goodbye, which, for some reason, stung more than anything else. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let this go. As soon as the door closed behind her, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. The anxiety, the rage, everything, it all shifted into something colder, more calculated. I wasn't going to just sit back and let this happen. She had lied to me. She was hiding something. And I was going to find out everything. I had to make a plan. I couldn't just confront her again without having proof, without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. If I was going to expose this, I needed to be smart about it. First, I made a call to one of her co-stars from the movie. A guy I'd met a few times at the premiere and a few other events. We had never been close, but I'd always kept things polite with him. He was a minor character in the film, nothing too big, but he might know more than he let on. "Hey, it's Mike. I know this is kind of random, but I was wondering if you could tell me if anything weird has been going on with the set lately," I asked, trying to sound casual. "You know, with the producers, or anything off in the dynamics?" He hesitated, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. "Weird? I mean, there's always a little drama with something, but you talking about Paul?" I didn't let him finish. "Yeah, Paul. I'm just curious, man. I've been noticing some things between him and my wife." There was a long pause before he responded, his voice lowering. "Man, I'm not trying to get in trouble or anything, but yeah, there's been some tension. You might want to watch yourself with Paul. I don't know the full details, but there's a lot of rumors going around." My heart raced. Rumors? What kind of rumors? Let's just say, Paul has a way of making sure people get ahead. You know how it is in the industry. If you want a part, you might need to give a little more than your talent. I don't know if that's what's going on with your wife, but it's been whispered that he's been pretty persuasive with a few of the actresses. Especially the ones he likes. My blood ran cold. So it wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't about acting anymore. This was about something else. Something much worse. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. I didn't need more confirmation. I already knew what was happening. But hearing it from someone else, someone who wasn't involved, made it feel so much more real. She was trading herself for opportunities. And now, I had the proof I needed. But it wasn't enough. I needed to know exactly what was happening between them, what had been happening for the last few months. So I waited for her to leave for the shoot that evening, then I followed her. I had never followed her before. Hell, I never thought I'd be the kind of person to spy on anyone, let alone my wife. But something in me snapped that night. As soon as I saw her walk out the door, dressed for the shoot, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know the truth. I didn't have any fancy equipment or anything, just my car, my phone, and a determination to find out what she was really doing. I followed her from a distance, keeping a few cars between us. I didn't want her to know I was there, not yet. She drove to the studio, as expected. I parked across the street from the entrance and waited. The hours ticked by slowly. My mind raced with possibilities. What was going to happen tonight? Was she going to meet Paul again? How far had this gone? Around 9:30 p.m., I saw Paul's car pull into the parking lot. He got out, looking casual, dressed in a black jacket and jeans. I didn't know exactly where she was, but I watched him head toward the back entrance of the building. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it. The moment I had been dreading. It was no longer a question of whether she was cheating on me. It was a matter of how deep this thing went. An hour later, I saw her car pull into the lot. She got out, looking like she had just finished a long day's work. Her hair was a little messy, but she was still beautiful. I waited, holding my breath as I saw her walk toward the building, and then, just as she reached the door, she stopped. And that's when I saw it. Paul was standing there, waiting for her. They shared a brief exchange, then he stepped in close. Too close. He whispered something in her ear, and I saw her smile. It wasn't just a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile she used to give me when we were first dating, the one that made my stomach flip with excitement. She laughed softly, then he kissed her cheek. My stomach churned. I couldn't stay there anymore, watching them interact like that. I couldn't let them think I was just going to stand by and do nothing. I needed answers. It was almost like the world stood still for a moment. I could feel the weight of what I had just witnessed sinking in, each second burning into my mind like a brand. The kiss. The way she smiled at him. The way she had no idea I was watching them. I had to make a move. I stayed in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought the bones might crack. I watched her and Paul walk into the building together, side by side, like nothing was wrong. I didn't know how much longer I could sit there, waiting. But I knew I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just storm in there, not yet. I needed more. I drove away. I went back home, pacing the apartment, the seconds feeling like hours. She wasn't going to be home for a few more hours, so I had time to think. But what was there to think about? I already knew everything. She was with him. Whatever she told me, whatever lies she spun, they were gone. The truth was there, plain as day. Around midnight, I heard the door open. I knew it was her before I even looked. She walked in, tired, but still trying to act normal. I could hear the click of her heels as she entered the hallway. But the moment she stepped into the living room and saw me standing there, waiting, her whole expression changed. Her smile faltered, her eyes widening with surprise then dread. She knew. "Mike? What's going on?" she asked, a little too defensively. I didn't answer her right away. I couldn't. Instead, I just looked at her. The woman I had married. The woman I thought I knew. The one who had promised me, time and time again, that nothing would come between us. She stood there, nervous now, fidgeting with her purse strap, like she knew this moment was inevitable. "I saw you," I said, my voice colder than I'd intended. Her face instantly went pale. She froze, her hands falling limp at her sides. "What do you mean, you saw me?" she asked, voice tight. "I saw you and Paul. You were together tonight. I saw how you looked at him, how he kissed you. Don't lie to me." She swallowed, trying to hide the panic in her eyes, but it was too late. She couldn't pretend anymore. She could feel it too, the weight of the truth hanging in the air between us. I don't know what you think you saw," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't lie," I said, my voice sharp. "I saw everything. You and him. You're cheating on me, aren't you?" The words hung in the air like poison. She didn't say anything for a long time, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. I watched her face, waiting for her to either break down or try to talk her way out of it. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaky. "Mike, it's not what you think." I shook my head, feeling the rage build up again. "Not what I think. I saw it with my own eyes. You kissed him. You're the one who's been lying to me. You've been lying to both of us." She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something different. Guilt. It flashed across her face like a brief storm, but then she wiped it away, replacing it with that familiar, practiced smile. "You don't understand," she said softly. "This is just part of the business, Mike. You don't get it." "Part of the business?" I repeated, my voice trembling now. "You're telling me that this is just part of your career? That you can just sleep with him because it's part of the business? No. I'm not buying it." She took a step back, her eyes darting toward the door like she was thinking of running. But then she stopped. "I didn't want to hurt you. I really didn't. But Paul, he's helped me get roles I could never dream of. He's given me opportunities. If I didn't do what he wanted, I would have never gotten this far. It's the way this world works, Mike. I had to do it." The words hit like a slap. She wasn't even sorry. She wasn't ashamed of what she'd done. She was just justifying it. Like I was the one who didn't understand. "You're telling me that you're using me to get ahead?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The anger was mixing with something else now. Something colder. More broken. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "It's not like that. It's just business. I never stopped loving you, Mike. But it's the only way. I didn't have a choice." "You didn't have a choice?" I echoed, unable to contain the disgust that boiled up inside me. "You chose this. You chose him. You chose lying to me, betraying everything we had. You didn't have to do any of it. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, her face a mask of guilt and frustration. But behind the facade, I saw the truth. She had made her choice. And now so had I. The room was suffocating. The silence between us felt like it was crushing me from all sides. I couldn't believe it. She had chosen this. All these months, I had been trying to understand, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but now the truth was staring me in the face. She had betrayed me for her career, for Rose, for him. I felt the heat rise in my chest, a burning rage I had never known before. It wasn't just jealousy, it was something deeper, something darker. The realization that the woman I loved, the woman who had promised to be mine, had given herself to someone else for power, it shattered me. "Mike!" she whispered, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the pounding in my ears, the sound of my own heartbeat as I fought to keep control. I took a step toward her. "Don't," I muttered, my voice rough with anger. "Just don't. I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. You've made your choice. You don't get to come back from this." Her eyes widened, and I saw a flicker of something, regret, fear, but it was too little, too late. I couldn't stay in the same room with her. I couldn't breathe the same air. I turned on my heel and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. I needed air, space, anything to clear my head. I walked around the block aimlessly, trying to escape the feeling of betrayal that was suffocating me. The streets were empty, the city cold under the night sky, but none of it registered. My mind was consumed with her. I thought of all the times we'd been together. All the moments we'd shared. How she had always been the center of my world, the person I trusted above all else. And now she had shattered that trust completely. When I got back to the apartment, she was sitting on the couch, waiting. She looked up when I walked in, but didn't say anything. The anger was still there, but now there was something else, disappointment. A deep, aching disappointment that came from knowing I had been a fool. "I'm leaving," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. She stood up quickly, reaching for me, but I took a step back, keeping the distance between us. "No. Don't," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Please don't leave me. We can fix this." You can't fix this," I interrupted, my voice hard. "There's nothing to fix. I don't want your lies, your excuses, your justifications. What you've done, I can't forgive that. I don't even know who you are anymore." Her face fell. She looked lost, like she didn't know how to reach me anymore. But I was done. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had spent years with, was gone. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. "I'm done, Jenna. I'm done with this, with you." Her lip quivered, and for a moment I thought she might cry, but the tears never came. Instead, she gave me one last look, one filled with a mixture of anger, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite name, and then turned away. She didn't even try to stop me as I walked out the door. I didn't know what I was expecting after I walked out of that apartment, but it sure as hell wasn't the emptiness that followed. I thought I'd feel some sort of relief, maybe a sense of freedom after confronting her, after getting the truth. But instead, all I felt was hollow. It was like a part of me had died in that apartment, something I would never get back. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely sleeping or eating. I was running on adrenaline, anger, and a crushing weight of betrayal. Every moment I was awake, I was thinking about her, thinking about everything she had done behind my back. I hated her for it, but at the same time, I couldn't get her out of my head. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't respond to her texts. I just needed space to breathe, to think. But she didn't stop. She kept calling, sending me messages, even emailing me at work. It was like she couldn't accept it, we couldn't be over. One night I finally broke. Her constant messages, her pleading, started to eat away at me. I hadn't even touched my phone in days, but I saw one last message from her. It was different this time. "Mike, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. You have to understand I was scared. I didn't think you'd understand. But I love you. I still love you. Please don't leave me. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that somewhere inside her, the woman I married still existed, but deep down, I knew the truth. I knew what she had done. She had chosen him over me, and there was no going back from that. But I still couldn't shake the feeling of being torn. She had been everything to me, and now it felt like she was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her think that she could just break me like that. I made a decision. I called her, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. Mike? Please, I know you're angry. But I don't want to talk. I cut her off. I don't want to hear your apologies. I'm done. I could hear the desperation in her voice. Mike, please. Please don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to therapy, we can. No, I said firmly, silencing her. This is over. It was over the moment you chose him over me. I've seen enough to know what you're really about. I paused, taking a deep breath. The words felt like daggers, but I couldn't hold them in any longer. You're not the person I married. You're not even the person I thought you were. You wanted to play these games with him, and now I'm done. You can't have both worlds, Jenna. I'm not your backup. She was silent for a moment, and I could hear her breathing through the phone. I thought she might beg me, but instead she sighed. I understand, Mike. I know I hurt you. And I know there's nothing I can say to fix it. But I still love you. That last part, I still love you, it hit me like a ton of bricks. She still loved me, but she had been willing to destroy everything we had just to climb higher in her career. And that's what broke me. I don't care, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't want your love. I want my life back. And I'm going to get it, with or without you. I ended the call and dropped my phone onto the couch. The weight in my chest felt unbearable, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. It was time to move forward. The day finally came when everything I had carefully planned came to fruition. I had kept my distance from her for weeks, letting her spin in her paranoia, her world unraveling little by little. I watched as the perfect image she had created for herself cracked under the weight of her lies and betrayal. Her confidence had turned into nervous glances, her bubbly persona now shadowed by the guilt she couldn't hide. And I was ready to deliver the final blow. It started with an email. Not to her, but to everyone who mattered in her professional world. Her agency, the directors she had been so desperate to impress, and even a few of the gossip sites that thrived on stories of scandal. I laid it all out. The messages, the videos, the undeniable proof of her affair with Paul. Her betrayal wasn't going to stay hidden any longer. The fallout was swift. By the end of the day, her phone was blowing up with calls and messages, her once adoring colleagues now turning on her with judgment and disdain. She tried to play it off, spinning lies to salvage her reputation, but it was no use. The truth had been exposed. When she came home that night, her face pale and eyes red from crying, she tried to confront me. "You did this, didn't you?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "You're trying to ruin me." I didn't deny it. "I didn't ruin you, Jenna. You did this to yourself," I said coldly, my voice calm despite the chaos she was radiating. "You lied to me. You betrayed me. And now, everyone knows the truth." She broke down, sinking to her knees, begging me to stop. "Please, Mike. Don't do this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it. I still love you." I stared at her, feeling nothing but emptiness. The woman I had once loved, the woman who had been my entire world, was gone. In her place was a stranger, a liar, a manipulator who had torn apart everything we had built together. "It's too late for that," I said quietly, walking away as her sobs echoed through the house. In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce. She lost her contracts, her role in the movie, and the respect of her peers. The man she had betrayed me for? He vanished the moment the scandal broke, leaving her to face the consequences alone. As for me, I found a strange sense of peace in the aftermath. The pain of her betrayal was still there, but it didn't control me anymore. I had taken back my power, my dignity, and my life. And her? She became a cautionary tale, a reminder that the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how carefully it's buried. Bye.